Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking an absolutely epic, sprawling transformation found right in the book of Exodus. We are tracing the Israelites' literal footsteps from the absolute depths of brutal oppression, all the way to the birth of a brand new society. It's a massive story, so let's just dive right in. I mean, think about it. How do you take a completely fractured, totally demoralized group of people who have literally only ever known subjugation and somehow forge them into a cohesive, self-governing, unified nation? That profound question right there, that's the thematic anchor for everything we're going to cover today. And because this text is just so sprawling, we'll break it down into three distinct acts: deliverance, covenant, and presence.
So Act 1, Deliverance, the rescue from bondage.
You know, every great rescue story starts with a massive problem that desperately needs solving. For the Israelites, it's 430 years in Egypt. Think about that time frame, generations upon generations. The text lays out a really harsh reality where a new pharaoh basically freaks out over their growing numbers. And the Egyptian response? Brutal oppression. They use violence to compel labor, making their lives incredibly bitter with mortar and bricks. And then, cruelly, they even withhold the straw but demand the exact same quota of bricks from the beaten foreman. It's an impossible situation. Now, what's really fascinating here is the profound human hesitation. God appears to Moses in a burning bush, one that, amazingly, isn't consumed by the flames, and calls him to lead this massive rescue. But Moses, he's an exiled, reluctant shepherd suffering from what we'd basically call monumental imposter syndrome today. He totally doubts himself. He literally asks, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and that I should bring the sons of Israel out of Egypt?" It is such a relatable moment of deep insecurity right before a monumental task. But contrast that doubt with this absolutely brilliant response. God definitively declares his identity. I am who I am. This powerful, unshakable declaration shifts the focus completely away from Moses and his insecurities. It completely sets the stage for the ultimate confrontation with the king of Egypt. And man, that confrontation sparks a rapid, escalating severity of plagues. Pharaoh's heart is hardened time and time again. It starts with the Nile turning to blood and a massive swarm of frogs, but it quickly escalates. We're talking gnats, flies, livestock disease, boils, and then severe environmental devastation like hail, locusts, and 3 whole days of thick, pitch-black darkness. Ultimately, Pharaoh's absolute stubbornness brings ruin to Egypt, culminating in the devastating final blow, the death of the firstborn. Right before that tragic final plague, we get the institution of the Passover. The Israelites are instructed to place the blood of an unblemished lamb on their doorposts, so the destroyer will literally pass over their homes. And the text gets super specific here. They are told to eat roasted lamb and unleavened bread in haste, with their loins girded and sandals already on their feet. They had to be fully prepared to just up and flee at a moment's notice. Okay, so the crucial point to grasp here is the sheer logistical magnitude of this exodus once Pharaoh finally breaks and lets them go. 600,000. And get this, that number is just the men on foot. When you add in the women, the children, a massive amount of livestock, and a mixed multitude that went up with them, we are talking about an astonishingly massive, chaotic migration out of Egypt. It's mind-boggling. Which brings us right to the breathtaking climax of Act 1. Pharaoh, of course, changes his mind. He chases them down with 600 select chariots. The Israelites are trapped against the Red Sea, and they are terrified. But then, Moses stretches out his staff. A strong east wind completely parts the waters, and they cross on dry land. The pursuing Egyptian army is thrown into total confusion and ultimately drowns as the waters come crashing back. Their deliverance is definitively sealed. Moving right along to Act 2, Covenant. Establishing the rules. Escaping Egypt was an incredible miracle, for sure, but honestly, it was really only step 1. Now they actually have to survive in a harsh environment, and the friction of freedom hits immediately. The people quickly start crumbling against Moses about starvation and thirst, so God tests them, but he also provides for them marvelously. I mean, he sweetens bitter waters at Marah. He literally rains fine, flake-like bread called manna from heaven every single morning, and even brings rushing water straight out of a solid rock at Horeb. But beyond just physical survival, there is a massive administrative crisis brewing. Moses is out there micromanaging disputes for millions of people from morning to evening. The brilliant solution? Moses' father-in-law, Jethro, steps in and essentially invents middle management.
He sets up a decentralized judicial system, appointing honest men to lead thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. This incredible delegation strategy is a real game changer and completely prevents Moses from just entirely burning out.
Now, let's just pause for a second and really take in this emotionally resonant moment at Mount Sinai. God tells the people, "You shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation." Just think about that for a second. These are people who, literally just months prior, were defined solely by their status as mud-covered slaves. And now, they're being offered this profound, elevated new identity and a totally unique purpose. But to actually function as that holy nation, they need a solid foundation of law. The source text outlines a sprawling legal code covering everything from property to violence to justice, but it all gets distilled down to these core foundational rules, the Ten Commandments. These rules establish the absolute baseline for their new society. They dictate both their exclusive relationship with God and the ethical, day-to-day obligations they have toward one another. And that brings us to Act 3, Presence, the relationship and the sanctuary. You see, the ultimate goal of the Exodus isn't just having a list of rules. It's actually living in close physical proximity to the divine. But right at the peak of this whole covenant, there is a totally devastating betrayal. While Moses is up on the mountain for 40 days receiving the law, the people grow super impatient. They literally melt down their gold earrings and fashion a molten calf to worship. They break the very first rules of their new covenant almost immediately. And the fallout is severe. Moses actually shatters the stone tablets in anger, and 3,000 men fall by the sword that very day. Yet, amazingly, the story doesn't end in destruction. Moses steps right into the gap and passionately intercedes for the people. And God mercifully changes his mind, which leads to this really beautiful, pivotal declaration of his character. He is described as compassionate, gracious, and slow to anger. The covenant is renewed, new stone tablets are cut, and God's grace is extended to this, well, admittedly very obstinate nation. Now think about this brilliant, thematic contrast derived straight from the text. Back in Egypt, they built massive structures, right? But it was through violent taskmasters, forced labor, and the crack of a whip. But here, to build the tabernacle, God's dwelling place, the new society operates entirely on generosity. The free will offerings are so overwhelming that Moses actually has to command the people to stop giving. The final chapters of the text are basically a meticulous execution of architectural blueprints. Spirit-filled, highly skilled artisans like Bezalel and Aholiab lead the charge here. They craft the Ark of the Testimony, this highly intricate golden lampstand shaped with almond blossoms, the bronze altars, and the massive courtyard hangings. And it's all executed exactly as commanded, right down to the very final peg. It is just an amazing feat of craftsmanship. And this brings the whole narrative to its incredible peak. Once the work is completely finished and inspected by Moses, the tabernacle serves as a literal physical mechanism for God to dwell directly among his people. The cloud covers the tent, and the glory of the Lord completely fills the space. The huge distance between the divine and the Israelites has officially been closed. Which leaves us with this final, really provocative thought. We've just watched them transform from oppressed brickmakers to a structured society hosting the very presence of God. But looking forward, the ultimate question remains. Can a nation whose identity was forged in the bitter chains of slavery truly maintain their freedom and faithfulness in the harsh wilderness ahead? It's one of those questions that just makes you want to immediately turn the page to see what happens next. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. I really hope you found this journey as fascinating as I did.